Hello everyone. For this lesson, we're going to talk more about parts of speech in the second part of our discussion about parts of speech. Now in this part, we're going to talk about adjective and adverb. To give you an overview about what we're going to talk about, the first is that we're going to explain about adjectives and how these words are used to add information to noun. And the second is about adjective and verbs, in this case verbs that can look as adjectives and functions as adjectives. The third, we're going to talk about adverbs, and also in the last part we're going to talk about adverbs and their difference with adjectives. Now let's start with adjectives. Adjectives usually add more information, or what they call modify the nouns. Most adjectives answer the question of what kind in describing the nouns, which one to narrow and restrict the noun, or in other words, to point at the noun. The third type of adjectives are those adjectives that shows the quantity of the noun. Now, the example of adjectives that show what kind in describing the noun are delicious, beautiful, colors such as red, green, and blue, and also the word smart. Examples of adjectives that narrow and restrict a noun are this, that, those, and other. And the adjectives that shows the quantity such as some, two, 40, or each. Now let's look deeper into the adjectives that shows what kind of nouns. We'll talk about these adjectives used in the context of a sentence. These kind of adjectives tell the quality, kind, or condition of the nouns or pronouns that they modify. We have an example of a sentence here. My grandfather loves to eat green apples. Now one thing about colors are they are what we call pure adjectives. They always act as an adjective. In this case, the word green is the adjective. It adds more information about what kind of apple, the quality, kind, or condition. Apples here are the nouns, and adjective is put right behind it to show that this modifies the noun in front of it. Now let's look at other examples of adjectives. The noisy neighbor had a party at midnight. Noisy here is an adjective that adds more information into what kind of neighbor we are talking about. In this case, it's a noisy neighbor. Now let's look at another example. King Arthur gave the Black Prince a good punch. Now we already know that colors are usually adjectives, and in this case black describes or modifies the noun prince and adds more information about which kind of prince or which prince are we talking about. Good here shows the quality of that punch, which is actually a good punch. Good here is the adjective. It modifies the noun punch. Another example is that the rain was heavy and noisy. Now in this construction, although the noun is a subject over here, the adjectives are on the end of the sentence, not directly behind the rain. This is because was is a to be, or what we call a linking verb. What is heavy and noisy? It's actually the rain. Heavy and noisy here describes the quality of the rain that we are talking about here. And this is a special construction that can always be made with using subject, to be, and adjectives. Now let's talk about the second type of adjective that shows which or how many. Examples are these adjectives, and we're going to see them in the sentences. These adjectives narrow down, point out, or restrict and tell the quantity of the nouns. In this case, we're going to talk about these adjectives in a sentence. They saw those planes coming down. Those here is the adjective. It modifies the planes, which are the noun. It tells us that it is those planes. So they point out those planes that are coming down. Now let us look at another example here. Some people took our money. Now some here explains the noun people. Some here is an adjective, show us the quantity of the people here. While here our explains that the money that we're talking about is our money. Our here explains the noun. Now let us continue with the potential problem that you would probably have with verbs acting as adjectives. Now, verb ing and verb 3 can sometimes act to modify nouns, to give explanations or give more information about nouns. We call these predicate adjectives. In this case, they can be in the form of present participle or verb ing, such as what we see in this sentence. People really love interesting stories. Now, interesting here acts as an adjective to explain, to add more information about the noun stories. Therefore, interesting here acts to tell us what kind of stories they are. Those are interesting stories. And another kind of verbs that acts as adjectives are past participles in the form of verb 3s. As we see in the example of a sentence here, the witness saw the drunk criminal. Now, the word drunk here explains what kind of criminal that we're looking at. Drunk here explains the word criminal. Now, to actually identify these things can be quite tricky. However, one of the ways that you can do is to actually put the word very in front of this kind of words. Now, the word very, when used with verbs, never makes grammatical sense, but it can be used freely with nearly all predicate adjectives, such as the past participle or the present participle. Now, let us see how we're going to do that. Very can be used with adjectives, or in this case, predicate adjectives. Example, we are moving next week. Now, moving is a verb. Now, if you put very in front of it, this doesn't really make any sense, because moving here is part of the verb are moving. This is a verb, because when you put very in front of moving, verb ing over here, it doesn't make sense. However, if you look at this one, if you put very there, it still makes sense. We are very upset. Upset here is a predicate adjective. Also, in this case, we use a verb 3, a past participle. Here, if you put very in front of it, it still makes sense. They were very encouraged. Encouraged here, although this is a verb 3, is a predicate adjective, because if you put very in front of it, it still makes sense. But in this case, the verb 3 here is actually a verb, because when you put very in front of it, they were very helped by their friends. It does not make sense. So, helped here is therefore a verb. Now let us continue our discussion about the next parts of speech, which is adverbs. Adverbs add more information or modify the verbs, adjectives, other adverbs, or even sentences. Most adverbs usually answer the question of how, to what degree, which is describing the manner and extent or the quality of something. The example here is those sentences, he eats quietly. So the word quietly here is an adverb that explains to us the manner of how he eats. The same case with the word beautifully here tells us about the manner how she sings. And in another example, we have here very beautiful cars. Very here tells us the quality of how beautiful are the cars. So in this case, adverb can be put after the word that it modifies, or it can be put just like adjectives before the word that it modifies. Also, adverb answer the question of where, showing the location. For example, put behind, sleeps upstairs, works downtown, works downtown. So this words behind, upstairs, and downtown shows us the location. These are the adverbs. And the last question that usually adverbs tells us is about when, which is showing time and tenses. These are usually time signals that tells us when something happens. Now let us talk about some examples of these adverbs in a sentence. Adverbs add more information, modify the verbs, adjectives, or other adverbs. As in this example, yesterday they masterfully did their performance. Now you know that did is a verb, the main verb of this sentence. Now why is it that this is actually put in a past form? It is because we have the adverb of time here, yesterday, that shows us the time, so that the verb here is actually made into a past form. So yesterday actually modifies the whole action of the sentence, and especially you can see it that the verb changes because of the adverb yesterday. Masterfully here also tells us additional information about the verb, like how they did the performance. In this case, masterfully. Masterfully is an adverb of manner. Now, adverb describe the time, quality, manner, and location. Let's look at more examples of this. The very noisy neighbor had a party at midnight. Neighbor here is the noun, and the adjective here, noisy, tells us which kind of neighbor we're talking about. However, the word very here actually modifies the word noisy, like how noisy they are, the quality and manner of the adjective here. Very, adverb, is modifying the word noisy, which is an adjective, and put just behind the word that the adverb is modifying. The second example here is King Arthur gave the Black Prince so very good punches. Now, the word punches is a noun, and the word good explains what kind of punches it was given, and the word prince is a noun, and the adjective black is modifying this noun. We are now going to look at this two adverb over here. Very tells us the quality or the manner of how good is it. Is it just somewhat good? Is it just middling? In this case, we get very good. Now the word so here is also an adverb, and it tells about the quality or the manner of how very it is. So to put it in another word, it is very, very good. We know this from the intensifier. We call this intensifier that show us how intense this good is. It is very good. It is so very good. So probably it's a top-notch quality punches, a very, very good punches. Now you should know that when adverb modifies adverb like this, it can do that. It can also make the phrase or the sentence a bit repetitive or clunky. So be careful when you're trying to modify adverbs with another adverb like this. Make sure that it makes good meaning. Now there is another example here. The rain sounded heavy and noisy upstairs. The rain here is the noun that is being modified by two adjectives here, heavy and noisy. And the word upstairs here is an adverb that actually tells us the location of where all of this thing, this whole action, this whole sentence is happening. So the adverb here is showing us the location. Now let us move on to how to identify adjectives versus adverbs. So which one is the adverb? Now you can identify this using the suffixes and the order where they are put in a sentence. First one is that adjectives modify only noun. So adverbs are not usually put directly before or after a noun. Adverbs modify verbs, adjectives, sentence, and everything else other than noun. Now this is just a way to remember things, is that adjectives modify only noun, where adverbs modify everything else. And you can also identify adjective and adverbs using suffixes. In this case, most words ending in ly or li are adverbs, while most words ending in l, ich, full are usually adjectives. In this case, let's have an example here. A very simplistic sentence is easily written here. Now, we know this is an adverb because it modifies the word simplistic. Like how simplistic? Very simplistic. The word simplistic ends with ik, so this can be also identified as an adjective. Sentence is a noun, as we all know. This is the name of things. Easily written here. Easily here is an adverb because it modifies the verb is written. How does it written? Easily. And where does it written? Here. So you would notice something, that adjectives are usually put directly behind the noun, while adverb can be in between the verbs, in this case, or after or before. Just in this case, it is before the adjective. So the position can also tell you something, the order that is, can also tell you something which one is the adjectives and which ones are the adverb. Now, suffixes can, most of the time, be used to predict the parts of speech of a word. Now, let's take a look at this. For example, we have the verb differ. The noun form of it is NCE, difference, while the adjective form of it is different. You will notice the suffixes that I highlight here, while the adverb is ending with ly, differently. Another word is invent. The noun is invention. It has special suffixes here. The adjective is inventive, which always ends with ive, if, and inventively, which has the same ending over here. Now, other words, such as beautify here, has the ending of ify, that is also can be used to detect whether it is a verb or not. The noun is beauty. The adjective is beautiful. Ful here is also another suffix that can tell you that it is an adjective, and the adverb also has the same ly. Now, some problem might occur with this. As I said, suffixes can, most of the time, be used to predict. However, if you see the verb and the noun here, the verb and the noun form of love is actually the same, while the adjective form of lovely and adverb is the same too. It ends with ly. So in this case, it doesn't work. Remember that you can try to predict or guess by using suffixes, but they might not work all the time. This is also another example. This is glorify, same as this one. Glorious is also ous is another example of suffixes you can use to identify the adjective, and gloriously is also ly. So a lot of adverb actually have ly as the ending or suffix. So let us summarize what we have learned so far about parts of speech. We have talked about nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs, and these are identifying elements of sentences or parts of sentence. The first is that nouns and pronouns are names of things, while verbs can be categorized as action or linking verbs. Adjectives modifies the nouns, meaning adding more information to the noun, while adverbs modifies everything except nouns. While the problem spot that we have talked about are gerund, which are verb ings that can act as a noun, participle, which are the verb ing and verb 3 forms of verbs that can act as adjectives, and also suffixes that you can use most of the time to predict the part of speech of a word. So this is the end of our lesson about parts of speech. I will see you next time. Goodbye.